Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity, and Love. I'm your host in San Antonio, Texas, Michael Andre Ford. We have another special guest this week, but before we get to her, she's waiting for us, and she's so fantastic. You're going to love her. I just wanted to do like a public service announcement. We've had amazing guests this year. We've recorded maybe 42 episodes with another 7 to go, reaching out into November, December. By the time you see it, it'll be November, December of 2023. Be sure to check out the entire show. Guests are actually, for the most part, interacting with angels. That's feeling, hearing, seeing, doing all sorts of stuff. At the very minimum, they're catching a little bit of blown lit sage smoke from San Antonio to Ireland. Lorna Byrne, the Irish angel mystic, caught daisies and roses. Jennifer McLean, the long time, 35 years, healing and other stuff. She caught 3 flower smells out in California, plus the sage smoke. So I encourage you to make sure not to miss a moment on these shows. They're fantastic. Today, speaking of fantastic, Ingrid Honkala, PhD, and it's actually Ingrid Garcia-HANSEN HONKALA. If you want to look her up, she's got an incredible background. Oceanographer, think marine biologist, everything from her native country where she was born, Colombia. She had moved to Europe before settling in the US, but she was for the Colombian Navy, head of their chief of marine biology in their ecology department. She's spent out of the last 20 years, maybe 15 or so years at Stennis Space Center, partly for NASA, partly for the US Navy. So when I say oceanographer, I mean oceanographer. And we're talking biospheres, marine life, lots of beautiful stuff. And she's had a near-death experience when she was a kid, almost drowning. She's going to share a little bit about that. She's been on the whole world circuit, domestic as well, talking about that experience. She has an incredible book, A Brightly Guided Life, How a Scientist Learned to Hear Her Inner Wisdom, from 2017. You can find that on Amazon. But I think just experiencing Ingrid, you're going to find a ton of enthusiasm, a ton of light, and just a ton of gentleness that's going to rub off on us all today. Ingrid, welcome to the show.
Wow, what an amazing introduction. And I'm so honored to be here with you today, Michael, and sharing with your audience. This is just amazing.
Every time I see you, and thank you for coming on this show. It's a total treat. I have been looking forward to this for days, just to reconnect with you. It had been a year or two. So Ingrid, can you give us just a touch of your, we'll call it ocean, maritime, marine biology background, so we understand a little bit there?
Yes. Oh, that's one thing I wanted to do all my life. Michael, I was just 4 years old when I was born in the mountains, but they took me on vacation to see the ocean, and I stood there completely mesmerized, and I turned to my mom and said, someday I'm going to know what is under that blanket. And my mom was like, oh, surprised. And when I was 5, I approached my dad and I said, Dad, when I grow up, I'm going to be a marine scientist. And my dad, again, he was like, where is she coming from with this stuff? And then he's like, if that's what you want to do, that's what you will do. And that was incredible. They support me with my idea. And from that point on, I wanted to just know everything about the ocean. But the other thing that surprised people is that my first near-death experience was drowning. So people ask me, how could you love the water so much if you drown? You should be traumatized. And I said, no, because drowning brought me to see the light. So for me, it turned into like, how can I go deeper and deeper into everything? And to me, the ocean was like this parallel. Let's go deeper and deeper. And then I became also a diver, master diver, and I've been diving all over the world. I've been in 56 countries of the world doing science, exchanging science and technology. When I worked for the NASA and the US Navy, even for the Colombian Navy, had the chance to travel, and it was incredible because exchanging science and technologies, I also got to exchange culture and spirituality all around the world. And yeah, with my career, the idea in my heart was, how can I bring people to remember that they are nature, that we are not separated from nature. And it was always trying to create consciousness about how to use our resources and how to have that sense of respect and the sense of, look, everything is here for us, but we're here for this too. We have to respect it. So one of the big projects I worked at the beginning with the Ministry of Environment in Colombia and UNESCO was mangroves. And I was the head of this project for the Caribbean islands. And again, it was not telling the people not to use. It was not forbidding the use of the resource, but how to use it in a way that was manageable. And we taught people to grow mangroves. That was never done before in the area. And then we created these greenhouses, taught people how to do it. People learned that if they didn't use the resource in a manageable way, it was going to disappear. So there was already many areas that were dead, and we were able to recuperate these areas. And the love for the resource and for the mangroves started to grow in the people in the area. So it's amazing. It's just about showing people the clarity of how we can live in community with everything we have around. And then when I work for NASA, I work with, especially with changes, climate change. I became an expert in El Nino phenomenon. And I started to work with climate change and see the exchange, the intake, and the how the oceans actually were also freeing carbon in the atmosphere. So we were working with all the cycles, about the cycle of carbon in the planet. And it was beautiful because since I was 12 years old, I started to have visions about the work I would do with NASA. And then, but I wanted to be a marine scientist. And I said, how is it possible that I will work with NASA if I'm not going to do anything in space? And they started to show me technologies that I was going to use in the future that didn't even exist back then, of how I was going to study the oceans from the space. So later on, I got to work with all the different sensors and all the different satellites that allowed us to read chlorophyll in the water and dissolve carbon in the water and temperature of the water. So it was amazing. It was like pretty much investigating the oceans using the stars, or let's say the sky. And then we will go to the field and collect samples, and that will help us validate the algorithms in the satellites. And it was incredible. We were able to see what was happening in general around the globe with the cycles of carbon. So again, it was writing articles, and I wrote the first book about oceanography for the Pacific coast of Colombia, the Pacific, let's call it ocean in Colombia. And then it was the way to, again, bring people the clarity of how the area behaves, what happened in the area. And also, I have done so much work in the field of oceanography, Michael. I also work with red tides, and that was another way to bring clarity to people of how much nutrients we're introducing in the water and how much that is causing an imbalance in the water. And then all these blooms of algae that are opportunistic are going to happen in certain areas, are going to consume the oxygen in the water. And also many of these algae that are in the group of the dinoflagellates carry toxins. So the products that we're going to eat, the fish or the shellfish, is going to be poisoned. So it's all these in just, again, trying to create consciousness on how we can treat our environment, our planet, kindly and with compassion and unity. Yeah.
Speaking of compassion, unity, consciousness, you've been traversing along your path. You've been on an international circuit, domestic circuit as a near-death experiencer, and you've shared your story quite a bit. And you've been on panels, you've been at conferences, tons of shows, and so on. Can you share with us at the front end, before we hear more about your background, what are you still experiencing? What are you still, there's constant growth and expansion. What are you noticing for your opportunities for growth even today? With everything that's come to fruition, how are you still expanding?
Every single day, Michael, with awareness. There's this beautiful sentence that I share all the time with people. I say, what is in the way is the way. So I use my everyday life, my everyday challenges, my everyday situations, my everyday moments as an opportunity to be more present, to be more alert, to be more attentive, to be more in the clarity that everything that life is bringing me is the way to be more in the now. So that presence is like, how can I just, again, use everything? When I'm eating, I'm trying to eat in presence. When I am washing my hands, I'm trying to do it in presence. When I walk, when I talk, the being so light always share with me very deep teachings, and one of these teachings is the teaching of the giver. There's 3 types of giver. The giver that gives for the sake of himself. And that's the majority of us, always waiting something in return. Even if that return means a smile or a thank you or something, we want something in return. The giver that gives for the sake of others, that start happening when we become more altruistic beings. Need that sense of like, wow, I'm here for service, I'm here for giving. And then I said to the beings, like, okay, how I know about the third? I thought that completed the giving thing. And they said, no. The third kind of giver is the giver that gives for the sake of God, for the sake of giving. And I said, how I know that I am there? And they say, when you are present, when you hear, when you listen, when you're with your children, with your husband, with your friends, with your boss, with whoever, be present, listen in that state of being present. And that listening that way creates healing. When you talk, be present. When you share something, be present. When you walk, be present. That's when you become a true giver. So that's how I try to guide my life. I get up in the morning and I said to God, please don't let me forgive you, or forgive that you're there. Like, help me remember you. Help me always remember you, and help me be present. Help me be present. So, because in that presence is that asking already, what can I do to serve today? And when you're present, you are at service. You are being already that vehicle. You're already being that element. You're already being that instrument for the light to shine through you.
Can you share with us your background, your skills? How are you helping others today? You've got the book, you do the speaking engagements, you appear as a guest on shows, but can you share a little bit more about how people can turn to you to get assistance for being more present and more?
Yeah, oh gosh. I do sessions online, one-on-one through Zoom. I also do mentorees. I do invited to do different kind of podcasts and shows and conferences. Is like the way how whatever presents in the way for me to be able to share is an honor. It's an honor for me, because that gives me the possibility to, oh gosh, be that vehicle and share that light. And one very important thing always, Michael, that I said to the beings of light, I said to God, please help me always be humble, and help me get out of the way. Let Ingrid's personality or ego or anything get in the way. So when I do one-on-one sessions, sometimes seems appear very hard when I get an email or the person tell me their story. I always ask for 2-3 lines. Tell me something quick, so that helps me connect with the person, and also opens that permission to go deeper and connect. And then sometimes when I read those couple of lines, I just know already, wow, this person is going through a very hard time, very challenging. And if I would stay in the, let's call it ego mind, or in the Ingrid personality part of who that make all this possible, I'll be like, oh, no, I cannot do it. That's too hard, I cannot do it. So I always have to calm the mind, breathe deep, ask God, the angels, the beings of light, just help Ingrid get out of the way and make me the vehicle for whatever this person needs to come through. And that's how the miracle happens. I'm not doing anything. Said, I'm not doing anything. I'm just allowing the light to shine through.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so for the audience, www.ingridhonkala, HONKALA.com is the website. People can check that out. Do you want to take us back to, was it when you were 5? I always forget the year, but the age. But when you had that near-death experience, was it a pool and you in cold water, I think? Can you mention that for us, or explain to us what happened when you were young?
Yes, and it was close to 3 years old. It was even younger. And people, I will bring people to understand how it's possible that I can remember this, because they always get like, how can you remember if you were so young? And there's so many things there that I'll bring you all to see with clarity why I could not forget. But I was close to 3 years old, and I was born in Bogota, Colombia, high up in the Andes. And then my parents would leave us at the care of a maid. They go work very early. And early one morning, they left for work. And like I mentioned, they leave us with a maid that she really didn't pay attention to us when they were not around. And then early that morning, my oldest sister, she was close to 4. And I decided, let's go play in the patio. And she wasn't looking, let's go to the patio. And the reason why they didn't like us to play in that patio is because there was a big tank. And the purpose of this tank was to collect water for hand washing clothes. Back then, we didn't have the washing machine. And this tank was about 900, or held about 900 gallons of water. So it was a big tank. And then we found a ball and decided, let's play cash across the tank. Just the thing they told us not to do, because that's fun. And then we found a couple of stools, climbed the tank. She sat on the flat surface where she was a little safer. And I went on the other side, and it was a thin edge. And I just bended my legs there, and I was leaning very precariously in this tank. But we were just having fun. And then she threw the ball. She didn't apply enough force. It fell on the water. It was floating. And I said, oh, I can grab it, So I leaned forward. And the moment I went to grab it, it rolled on the surface of the water. And I lost my balance and fell in the tank. So as I mentioned, people think that because I'm from Colombia, I come from hot weather country. But like I said, Bogota, high up in the Andes, around, I think, 10,000 feet. The water in that tank was very cold. So it had to be about, 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So the first thing was the sense of this water was pretty cold. Just right there, I already felt that like my breath had been taken just by the coldness of the water. And then it came that huge terror of why I cannot breathe. I had never been in a pool. we didn't have a bathtub, so I didn't know that if your head is underwater, you cannot breathe. And then it was that panic, Michael, like, why I cannot breathe. And then it's when the miracle happened. I went from that state of absolute horror, just like that, to peace, calmness, serenity, like, oh, I didn't know what happened, but I didn't need to breathe. I didn't need to escape out of the tank. I didn't need to go anywhere. And when I am in this absolutely peaceful state, now I see light. And it's very important, the presence of this light, because this is the part when I mention people that is very hard to forget. I will never forget, because there was a lot of contrast that I experienced. The first contrast, the terror of drowning and meeting this peace. The second contrast is that this tank was completely made of cement. It was dark. There was a roof on top. It was early in the morning. So the last thing I saw with my eyes open was darkness. And when the light come, it's like, is this light that came, like it was lit up from the bottom. And it was enough to put light in the whole watery surrounding. So the first thing I just say was like, oh, now there is light. And the other thing that I experienced was, I live in a house that was very noisy. And the last thing I heard in that moment of panic was, imagine my heart beating, boom, 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 boom. And it just sounded like a drum in my head. And the moment I entered into the state of peace, it was silence. And it was this incredible, incredible silence that came with peace. And then, Michael, I craved that silence for the rest of my life. After that, I will hide in closets, going to chapels under the bed. I wanted that silence back, and I didn't know how to get it back. And I call it the silence behind the silence. And then when I am in this, again, space of silence and peace and calmness and light, now I started to see bubbles that were shining with light. And then imagining that childlike state, like, oh, there's bubbles. And then I started to chase these bubbles. And it was by chasing the bubbles that I turned around and I saw a body suspended in the water. And it's when I had that absolute clarity. That's my body. But it was not the sense of fear or the sense, it was actually the opposite. It was the sense of familiarity, like, oh, this is normal. And then I look at the body and it came the other contrast. I was born as a very sick child. And I spent the first almost 3 years of my life feeling unwell. So this is the other big thing. I didn't even know how it was to feel well. And then it was this body that was so much trouble. And then the moment I am in this absolute state of well-being, imagine what I saw that body and I'm like, I'm not going back there. No, thank you. And then I turned around and I left the body behind. And it's when I started to see flowers, and these flowers were blooming from nowhere. So I love that you mentioned flowers today, because that's an aspect of my near death that was amazing. And then I was picked by the flowers. So it's the moment that even the idea of dimension disappear, because I'm being now carried by flowers. And I put the analogy that is like going back to the womb, when you don't have to do anything, you're just being done. And I'm like, oh, this is so good. Like pretty much completely relaxing in that state of joy. And then something happened, and it was like in just a flash, I appeared in the maid's room. And then I'm looking at the maid from above, like if I'm floating. And I'm just looking at her. I'm like, oh, that's Maria. Maria completely unaware. She was listening to soap operas in the radio. And then nothing happened. So in another blink like that, I appeared in my mom's room, in my mom's path, sorry. And my mom was walking. She didn't have a car. And she was close to her bus stop. And when I look at her from above, Michael, this is that. One, validates the story. And two, I think it blows everybody's mind away, because the moment I look at my mom and I said, oh, that's mom, she stopped. She did not give another step. She completely stopped and she said, something is happening at home with one of my babies. And I always mention that she even had a new job. You know, the urgency and the ego part will be like, I have to go to my job. But no, my mom, first, she had a big intuition. And second, I'm so grateful that she listened to her intuition. And she started to run back. She did not even hesitate. She just turned around and started to run. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, oh, I wonder why she's running. And then the moment I'm like looking at my mom, wondering what she's running, I change my view and I see a dog. And there's a dog at the end of the street. And the moment I look at the dog, I'm like, oh, cute doggy. I love animals. So my desire was to be with the dog. And the moment I have this desire, I am with the dog. So I got surprised, like, whoa, what just happened? And then at that moment, I changed my view and I see a park. The moment I feel the desire to be in the park, I am in the park. And I'm like, oh, this is fun. And I started to play a game of going places. So that sense of, you know, as the way we know space and time completely changed for me. And now I could be anywhere at any time. And then I'm playing a game and I'm having a lot of fun. When in another flash, in a blink, I appear in a realm. And the realm is made of pure, bright, intense, shiny light. And Michael, this is the first time in my almost 3 years of life that I felt, oh, I am home. I am home. And you know what is home? Is the sense of familiarity again, the sense of like, oh, you can rest, you can just be there. And although I didn't see anybody at that moment, I felt welcome. I felt embraced. And it was the feeling of like, wow, I can just rest here and dissolve. And although I had seen my body in the water, up to this point, I didn't have like that clarity, that realization that I was not that body. I was still identified. But at this moment is that sense of like, wow, I am not that. I am not that persona. I am not that body. And it's when I realized myself as a being of light. And the moment this happened, I was still having the sense of self. But I was, again, it was that sense of dissolving, the sense of like becoming whole. And then even this sense of self disappeared. And it's when I experienced what I call nothingness. Some people call it non-self, some people call it emptiness. Different ways to see this, but I call it nothingness. And when I said nothing, people get afraid, Michael, because they're like, oh my God, nothing. But I'm like, no, it's just, imagine that. And I give this analogy. Imagine that all that you knew about yourself is a little tiny box in the middle of a huge stadium. And all you thought you were was that little box. And suddenly you're out of that box. And you realize that you're nothing, because it's nothing you knew, nothing you thought you were, but your wholeness. at the same time. So learning later from other teachings and stuff, it was that sense of, probably call it, interconnection with everything there is, and knowing that this individual being was just only a little aspect of who I am, but I was this totality, like what we call the little self, and the self with capital S. So of course, those are clarities I got to understand later in my life. But at that moment, I was just, the only thing I could say right now is that there was a moment where there was not judgment, there was no color, no movement, no form, no sound, nothing I could describe. There was just, I would just say, pure presence, just pure consciousness. That's how I got to understand that over time. See, at that moment, I would just say expansion, joy, wholeness. And then when I'm in this state of being, my mom finally arrives home. And this is the other thing that is just incredible. We live in a big house. And my mom could have gone to any room in the house and I would have drowned, because the body cannot take that much, of course, but she knew exactly where to go. And she directed herself to the back of the house where my sister was still there. People ask me, why your sister didn't call the maid? And she's like, I was like, because we didn't supposed to be in the patio. So she was going to, she knew she would be scolded. So she's like, she stayed there. And then my mom arrived. The other purpose for her staying there is that the moment my mom entered, she said, Ingrid is there, mom, and I cannot get her. She was too little to get me. The tank was very deep. My mom jumped into the tank. She got me out. She said that I was like a raggedy doll. No pulse, no breathing, no nothing. That she said I was completely no color. My lips and nails were purple. And then my mom, this is the other amazing thing, Michael, she knew how to do CPR for children. She worked with children. So these are the beautiful synchronicities in life. And then she just started to do anything she knew to revive me, whatever she knew how to do. But I was so disconnected from this reality. Remember, I am in my state of like completely joy, pure presence there, my self with capital S, and my whoa, nothing to do with this reality. And then in like another flash, like everything in this experience was like that. It's like I had jumped from the tallest building in the world. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. And it was like, no. Then I felt that I was being pulled, like I was being sucked back into the body. And oh gosh, it was like I had so much resistance. So when I knew I was back in the body, because the feelings of being cold, of being ill, that lack of freedom, going back in the box was like, oh, I was so disappointed, so angry. And no, I was very unhappy, Michael, to be back. Yeah.
Oh, okay. How did the next like decade go, or the next 2 decades go? Did you always think about this? Did you only think about it once a week? Eventually you just got caught up in the stuff that children get caught up in. How often did you reflect back? Or did you get like light beings, angels, beings of light popping in? Did your vision increase? Did your hearing increase? Did your intuition kick in? You started to connect more to animals. Can you share with us, how did that unfold?
Oh my God, Michael, all of it. So that was like night and day. My life completely shifted. So that's when also people say, how can you remember? Because nothing was the same again, ever. So when I came back from this experience, it's clear that I came with an awareness I did not have before. Even though I was that little, it was the part of like, I'm not that little child. I look at myself and I was like, I'm not this child, starting from there. And it was when I look at my parents, it was that sense like, you're not just my biological parents. I had experienced oneness So I felt them as my equal. And from that point on, I became a rebellious child, because I was like, why do I have to listen to these people? And again, I didn't feel like a child, so why do I have to listen? I'm not a child. And the other thing, I would look at other children and I could not relate with them. So imagine going from a playful, normal child to a child now that was feeling like, what is happening to these people? They don't know anything. So I couldn't relate with anybody. I always, when I do some talks, I show people the pictures of the before and after Ingrid being that little child, and you see two completely different persons, two people, because I just became very serious. That childlike smile like that went away, because I could not understand what was happening. And I imagine so young, I did not have the language to express what is happening. And the other thing, to validate that this was a different version of Ingrid, I'm telling you, I'm just about to be 3 years old. And after my near-death experience, now I can read, I can write, I can resolve mathematical problems, I can put together complex puzzles, I could paint, I could even have a language that was more elaborated, although I did not have the way to explain what was happening. There was no clarity. Nobody around me knew what was happening. So imagine, it was very hard. So I became angry. I refused to eat. I refused to engage. I didn't want to leave, because and I guess at that moment my way to say I don't want to be here was not eating, not nourishing myself. So it was very, very hard, Mike. But this is the thing I also say, keep repeating to people and say it over and over, that it was hard to forget, because I always say that the doors for me never close. And this is something funny, because years later, I kept saying that, and the being so loud one day said to me, Ingrid, of course the doors never close, because there are no doors. What makes us think that we close the doors is that due to conditioning and due to beliefs, to culture, to experiences, we create layers or doors. We close the doors ourselves. But in reality, what we call God, consciousness, the kingdom of heaven, is here for everybody, always. But saying, in my case, when I say it this way, is because for me it's like after the near death, when I enter into that state of anger and rejection and such a hard time. Again, early 70s, nobody knew about near-death experiences. Nobody knew about anything like this. And then what saved me, one, I had a mom that was very compassionate, and I will tell you later what else was incredible about this. She worked with children, and or I can just give you a really quick idea why she was so open. My mom could also see things that other people could. So, but I'll mention that a little bit more later. But of course, then my mom knew something is happening here, but I will come to my mom, Michael, and I will say, Mom, you don't understand. This is not me. This is not my name. This is not who I am. Imagine a 3-year-old. But what saved me at that moment is that I started to have what we know today as out-of-body experiences. So after my near death, every time I went to sleep, I would go back to that realm of the light. So that was comforting. It was like, oh, so I had those moments where I could relax. But I remember growing up thinking, there was a point I would just sit and think, what is real? I didn't know if I would think this has to be the dream. This has to be the dream. So when I wake up, I would think this is the dream. And when I was in that realm of the light, I felt that was the true reality, which at the end of the day, in reality is only one, but we just have, again, all these veils, all these layers, and all these egos. So, but that I came to understand many years later. But at this moment, I am going to sleep. Of course, my parents fired that woman that almost let me drown, or that let me drown. got another one, but I decided that sleeping was the place where I felt good. And if the child is sleeping and you don't have to take care of the child, oh, that's good. She let me sleep forever. So that was good, because in these trips, I started to, one day, I was completely surrounded by starlight figures. So for me, the way of healing came in that most miraculous way. And it was by seeing these, it's like it was just at night, you're seeing the stars out there in the universe. For me, it was imagine seeing lights, but everything was it was like daylight. It was not like dark at night. It was like everything was shining in light, but I could see starlight figures everywhere, shining in all different colors. And then now I wanted to be there. And in one of these journeys, one of these lights that was shining in gold shaped itself into a human form, like to show me, look, we're the same. And then it touched me. And it's when I said, oh, you are a being of light. And in that occasion, I woke up and I'm like, whoa. And now I wanted to sleep all the time. You imagine, like, that's where I have to be. But of course, I could not be the child that is left forever. So now balance was needed. And the way this balance came is that one day I'm taking a shower and I'm relaxing there in the shower. And then suddenly a blue, intense, shiny light appears in the bathroom. And I'm like, oh, now the beings of light are here. And then when they started to appear here, I started to see them everywhere. It was that sense, Michael, of, oh, now home is here, home is here. Because it was like they didn't have to do or say anything, but just their presence made me feel love, made me feel accepted, made me feel embraced, made me feel good. So I started to eat. I started to play with my sisters. I started to engage. So it's when like a big, big blue, intense light appeared in the bathroom. And now is that sense of feeling that the beings of light are now here. And I started to see them everywhere. And I started to have the sense of being home. And this is the other beautiful teaching that I understood years later down the road, Michael. And it was that home was not a place, but a state of being. And then when the beings of light are here with me, I started to feel that sense again of like being embraced, the sense of being loved, the sense of, oh, just feeling good. And I started to again eat, be more playful, play with my sisters, engage. So I started to heal. And up to this moment, the beings of light didn't do or say anything. But the moment I started to hear was another incredible experience. But up to this point, I could feel them. I could smell flowers. It was like this beautiful, beautiful, intense, incredible smell of flowers everywhere. And then I also could see them. And that moment in which I started to hear was one day I was throwing a big tantrum because although I was feeling better, I didn't have the sense of attachment with my persona. And I didn't feel of attachment with my name. And then one evening they were calling me to eat dinner and it was Ingrid, Ingrid, Ingrid. And I'm like, oh, just don't call me like that. I felt aggravated. And then the lady came like, we're calling you for dinner. And then Ingrid, why you're not coming? And I said, stop calling me like that. That is not my name. And then the lady said, then what is your name? What should we call you? And I said, I do not need one. So of course, this girl and they got just mad and sent me to sleep. And then there in bed, I was crying and I was, it was this sense, I would cry to the beings of light and say, what is going on? What is the manual? Why am I here? What is happening? And then is when they started to talk to me for the first time in this very loving and this very beautiful voice. And they said to me, it's going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light, as you already know. And I'm like, oh, so I'm not crazy. I understood now why names were not needed. Of course, later it came to clarity that names are beautiful, that names carry energy, that names are we needed in our human experience, but I just felt I didn't need one, and that got clarified for me. They were telling me labels are not needed in the realm of the light. Reason why, in reality, I never needed to give a name to the beings of light or see them in certain way or give them certain characteristics. Every time from that point on and met them, it was okay that they were just shining as light. And although they didn't have any facial features, I always knew who was talking. So that's incredible. It all presents to us in the way that we need it, in the way that we can understand it. So, but there's other couple of things they said to me. It's better that you don't talk to anyone because they're not going to understand. But I was like, what is not to understand? And that was my experience, and it was clear for me. And they said, but someday, everything that is happening to you, for you, you will share with others. And they told me it was going to be lay down the road. And so it was hard because imagine it was like, I wanted to go and talk to everybody about what I was experiencing. And then the other thing, they said that I was never going to be alone, that was going to be people in my path to help me and guide me, and that they were always going to be there. And then, yes, they were right. So the first person that was there to validate my experience, as I was mentioning before, was my mom. And the way this happens, Michael, this was amazing because I joined the school. I was in kindergarten, and the beings of light told me not to talk, but they didn't tell me not to paint. Beings of light everywhere. So I was painting beings of light in every book, in every place. And then the teacher that comment like, is this the stars and the sun? Because that was already kind of like too much. And I'm like, no, these are my friends, the beings of light. And the teacher was like, oh, we better call your parents, because she thought I had imaginary friends. And then my mom came to school, and we discovered something else, that besides me seeing beings of light, I could see auras, because I was painting auras around everything. And then is when my mom is looking at all these paintings, and I turned to her and I said, Mom, I was desperate. Imagine you're desperate for someone to believe you. You're a child. And I'm like, Mom, these are the colors that we wear, and these are my friends, the beings of light. My mom looked at me with the big mom eyes, like, like, and she's like, she was a teacher, so she didn't want me to be in trouble. So she's like, she told the teacher, this is just a phase, we're going to work and nothing is happening. And we left school, and I'm like, nobody believes me. I'm alone in this world. And it's when my mom turned to me and she revealed that she also could see things nobody could see. She said to me she could see what we call spirits. And then, I was now like, somebody also can see stuff. So that, imagine, that was amazing, that feeling that now someone was there and with you. And she said that she could see things since she was about 5 years old, but that she had been told not to ever talk about it. And then that I should do the same because nobody understood. So at this point, I felt she's saying the same thing the beings of light are saying. And later, when I was 6 years old, I started to see spirits. And I didn't know the difference because I didn't know there was any difference there. And then When I saw the first spirit, Michael, I was in tremendous fear. And I was like, I got the scare of my life. I just didn't know what it was. And I will explain later that really there was nothing bad. It was just I didn't understand it. So when I saw what happened, I was petrified. And then I stood up. I told my mom, Mom, the beings of light and the spirits are not the same. So my mom asked me to explain clearly what is it that I was seeing. And when I explained clearly, my mom started to cry. And she said, I think that you see angels. Then I said, oh, Mom, I don't think they're angels because they don't have wings. Because all we knew was just the Catholic teachings. And then now I've been talking to the beings of light for a while. So I went there and I said, what is with these dark spirits? That's I called them because I didn't know better. And they were so compassionate. And they're like, look, these that you call spirits, you as in essence, we're all the same. The difference is the level of awareness that you have about who you truly are. And the reason that I have felt this difference is because they say there's some beings that are very attached to the matters of the world. And it's hard for them to remember that they are not that. So the feeling of fear came because it was just a different frequency, not because there was nothing wrong. So for me to be communicated with the beings of light, I was vibrating at a very high frequency. So the moment I had the encounter with this spirit had lower frequency. So it was just a difference in frequency, that's all. So the moment I understood that that was happening, then I didn't fear them anymore. So that was a complete new story there. But yeah, and the other thing I asked them is like, my mom said that you are angels. Is that what you are? And the answer that they gave me, Michael, was incredible because they said to me, Ingrid, we are what you want us to be. So that's, again, that part of the universe is so compassionate. It presents to us in the way that is needed for each one experience and evolution. Later on, again, I started to learn about Ascended Masters, and I asked them if they were what they wearing. That's what they wear. Ascended, people call you like that. Is that you are? What is the difference? And they say, again, it's the same. They say, at the core of our being, we're all the same. The difference in this case is how evolved and how much experience you have had to get to that point of remembering your true nature. So how conscious you are. That's the only difference there.
I love it. I always describe angels as dolphins and light beings, broader whales. You know, there are otters and there are turtles. So I'm trying to remember, I don't use this too often, but like your relatives who are passed over and loving have gone to the light would be otters. There's, oh, and the guides, whether they're religious, non-religious guides, they're passed over, they're loving, maybe sea turtles. It's all the marine life that you can swim with, but not the marine life that if you go out to dinner with them, you know, they want to take you out to dinner, you're going to come back, not get a bite and taken out of you. So I always like to say swimming with the dolphins, the whales, that's the best. There's no hierarchy is what I've heard. And I love what you're saying. I'm going to digress for 30 seconds. Sorry, I'm going to share. But like for years, 3 different houses, I've had visitors come in from all over, not just broad consciousness from beyond anything we're going to understand. But I'll be watching, it's usually watching TV in the living room. I hate to do this. The original house in Austin had these stairs that V'd and then changed directions. So light would move down the stairs or up the stairs out of the corner of the eye. And it wouldn't just be me. We would see together. And back then I was very jittery. I'd be like, oh my God, I just saw that. What do you see? And now my cat, my alive cat, Presley, shot out of the office the other night. And I saw her do a 180 like on an ice rink because she had never met our former dog, Maggie, who's passed over. And our dog just showed up, Maggie, in the office. My cat shot out and did a 180 with their tail swishing left and right, because she's never met this one. We have 2 other dogs that are alive. And so she had never met Maggie, but Maggie woofed the other night. I've had that happen before years back. But lots of visitors, lots of guests, even my dog's collar. I take it off every night because I don't want it jingling in bed when she jumps off and shakes every time. And so that collar, I always put it on the kitchen counter. I woke up and the collar was by our other dog cage for our little Labradoodle. We keep her separate, locked up. And so the collar was on the bedroom floor, a whole different room put there. And when we checked with angels, I just call them angels, different frequencies, different level of consciousness, different backgrounds. But even angels can be from really far away and much bigger than you realize. It's what you said. They give you a way to relate that makes it easier for you to stop pestering or worrying. Like I got stuck on ghosts existing, and boy, did I need a helping hand to get over the concept of ghosts. I hadn't met any angels. But with the dog collar, it was just mentioned it was a unconditional love visitor. I don't have to go blow sage for 5 hours in the house to get rid of anything. But I had to mention that because everything you're saying, I'm loving it. Now, as you got older, how did this impact your high school, your social development? Hold on, high school, social development, college, your studies? Did you turn into a big scientific geek? Did you dive into your studies, or was it the opposite? You could barely pay attention, but you just knew what you knew?
Oh gosh, Michael, a lot happened because it, like I said, it affected everything. So the other incredible person that came to my life, as mentioned by the beings of light, was my father, mother, my grandmother. She this was beautiful because in one side I'm having the experience, and in the other side my grandmother come with the teachings.
Ooh.
So
and
she
you knew your grandmother from when she was alive, or you
yeah,
met? Okay.
oh, she was alive, yeah, and she came in, but she lived in Venezuela,
Oh,
and
okay.
she
So she was
was
alive.
come
She
to
wasn't coming
visit.
through as a spirit. Okay.
No, she
No.
came to
Okay.
visit, and then oh, she just died a couple of years ago, but yeah, she came and to visit from Venezuela, and then she started to bring all these spiritual teachings because she was raised as Catholic, but she always had the sense of like there has to be more, there has to be more. And at the time, she found an order called the Rosicrucian Order. She joined, and then from there, she opened the space to want to learn about Kabbalah and about the chakras and about in Hinduism and Buddhism and just all the different kind of teachings. And then she started to talk to my parents in reality about all these. And her daughter had got to India, my aunt. So when she's talking like this, I approach my grandma and I am like, she's talking to me. And I said, you're the first person that talked like the beings of light. Mm. And then my grandma and I got really close together. She taught me how to meditate. I was 8 years old. And then with the first meditation I did with the Om, I went to sleep and woke up in the middle of the night with the whole house vibrating. So that was the first Kundalini shaking I had. So everything was vibrating. And from there, I started to have deeper and deeper experiences. And my grandmother was there to guide me. And then growing up, she will bring books to me. And by 9, I was already reading the Bhagavad Gita, books of self-realization, books of discernment. I was reading just all kind of really, really high teachings from ascended masters, from I started to study Vedanta and just a lot of different teachings. And by the age of, I think it was 13 years old or 14, I started to do transcendental meditation. And then by the age of like 15, 16, my grandmother created a group called Agni Yoga, which are the teachings of the inner fire. And then I started to really dig deeper. And while other people are playing and partying and going out, I am in like this very deep spiritual path. But that created a huge dichotomy, that created a huge problem because I could not relate. And at school, I was being bullied. People didn't understand my nature. I didn't understand how to really get with these people. So it was very hard. And my oldest sister became my protector at school. It was a very difficult situation for me. And then when I joined college is when, Michael, I decided I need a different kind of life. I need something different because my sisters were very beautiful, and now it was like, the world of the parties and the boys and the boyfriends and all this stuff. And I was like, I did not belong to none of it. And then they were trying to teach me and how things, and I felt alone and I felt different. So it was like, but now I wanted to join with them too. So imagine that sense of like you didn't even know which way to take. So when I joined college, I made this decision inside myself. I want to be like everyone else. I am tired of never fitting anywhere, only with the adults that were doing, and not many people were doing this kind of a spiritual path, especially in Colombia, where 98% of the population was Catholic. So, and when I went to the priest, look, I was 9 years old when I did my first communion, and my love for God was so intense that I wanted just to become a nun because it's all I knew. But I was so in love, Michael. There was nothing else in my heart than God. But when I went to our priest and I told him, you don't understand, it's not about fear. It's not about fear. And I was saying to him, it's about love. I know that love. I know God's love. Oh, this guy, what can you know? You're but a child. And when I said, don't talk about fear, he said that those were the words of the devil. So he put me to go in this corner and pray. And I imagine not everybody's like that. This guy was this guy. But at that moment in my life, I felt very confused. And I didn't know which way to take. See, I had my grandmother, but there was a lot of confusion. She was not always there. Like I said, she lived in Venezuela, so I didn't see her all the time. And then one time, I'm 12 years old, she came to visit, and I developed existential depression. I didn't want to be here. And then I told my grandmother that I wanted to die. And it was the first time she took me to a Buddhist temple. And it was this little Zen Buddhist temple in Bogota that was unheard in the middle of nowhere. She took me there, and I entered the temple, and I'm like, whoa, this feels so good, so peaceful. I felt like aligned with it. And then it's when she said to me, she talked to this monk. He taught me how to do this breathing meditation technique. I felt like, again, like I was home. And at the end of the practice, after feeling just so good, I tell him, look, my grandma is a very busy person. She travels. I don't think she can bring me to the temple again. I don't think I can come back. And he said, you never need to come back. And I said to him, why not? What do you mean? And he said, because you already have a temple. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you are the temple. So wherever you are, you can practice, you can bring these teachings with you. You are that. So now I walk around feeling I am the temple. No, and I'm becoming the guru of my own temple. So see, these are just things that were happening. But yes, of course, the Ingrid that was living this spiritual life could not fit in the world that was there around me at that moment. So when I went to college, I make the decision, I want to be like everyone else. And of course, the career I picked, very grounding career, which was needed at the time. And when I was already in college, I was 19 years old, when I had an experience on a bus. There was a lot of conflict in my heart. I didn't know how to feel. My parents were about to get divorced. Everything that you can imagine was like not going well. And then I am in this bus, and I said, I wish none of this was real. And I said, people, watch out what you ask for, because it will be truth. And then everything started, I started to feel and see and know all the constituents that made possible this buzz, like organic, inorganic. Then I started to feel the vibration, and I started to, and it's just how everything just stopped vibrating the way it was, and everything dissolved, and I was in, like, again, this realm of the light. And then everybody went back together, everything went back together, and I said, how is this possible? And then I said, then I came back with two questions. I said, when is it possible? How is it possible to forget who we truly are? And when did we forget? And then the beings of light at that moment said to me, in 20 years, you will understand. So they later, in other things happened. I wrote all of that in the book, but they say in 20 years, you will understand. But it was the moment when also the beings of light asked me if I wanted to become a teacher of spirituality. And I said, no, I don't want to teach anything, and I'm not going to teach anything. I just wanted to be like everyone else. So I asked them, can you please let me be? So when people, I said these, they're like, how could you do that? But come on, I was, for 19 years old, I felt like I didn't belong. Like, imagine being in a world where you feel that you're a complete stranger. Is this need, you have the need, I had to be human. I had to feel how my humanity was. I had to feel how it really was, or I could not stay. My thoughts of wanting to leave were just very strong. So, and they understood that. And at that moment, they said to me, it's okay. For a while, you will not see us. So it was hard, it was difficult, but the analogy that I give to people for them to understand this in a more compassionate way is like, everybody leaves home. You love your parents, but you go to school, you get married, you leave your nest. Same thing with me. The beings of light were like my parents, and at this moment I need to live my independent life, understand life for myself. And then it was like I always say, you leave home, but your parents are one call away. So it's not like I never was going to ever talk to the beings of light again, but I was not going to see them or have that same connection like I was having up to this point. And that was good. And incredibly, the first person I met was not going to be the most spiritual like guy there meditating. No, I met a guy that was very grounded, the parties, the everything, and I fell for that guy. I needed to ground. I picked a grounding career. Everything was bringing me to also have these, my feet, like I needed an anchor because I was floating there in the clouds. And the other thing was that it was the other analogy I put here, Michael, is like, imagine that for almost 19 years, I was in a room with the lights on. So if you're in this room with the lights on, look, there's a table there, there's chairs, you don't trip because you see. All the furniture is there, you have the light. What happens when you turn off the light and it's pitch black and you have all this furniture in this room? You're going to trip. So that's what happened. The moment that I cut this connection, now you're on your own. I started to have a lot of challenges. So I have had challenges before. Yeah, my life itself was a challenge for lack of understanding. But now there was the challenges of, look what happened when you're disconnected. And many, many big challenges presented in my life. And things that really brought me to one disconnection back, to that taught me to appreciate the value of
I just wrote appreciation down and gratitude and allowing.
Yes. And but incredibly, all the years of being, of course, connected, and this of course, Michael, imagine I grew up with this heart, with this compassion, with this standard. So anyways, in my career, this brought me to pick the choices of that I told you at the beginning. All my projects were, how can I bring people to be more conscious? So even in my own career, all my studies, all my research, all my investigation, everything was guided to bring consciousness to people, to write books, scientific books, papers, articles, everything that could.
So tell us college, tell us what you chose and a little bit of the detail of the path so people can hear that.
Yeah, so yeah, I chose to study marine biology, and that was the college that was available for this kind of thing I wanted to do. And that brought me to travel too, because I had to move to the Caribbean and become a scuba diver. And there was many amazing things, but many challenges that also happened. Maybe I can describe one of those big challenges for you here, but thanks to this connection and this alignment log is when we know once we have gained that level of presence, it always stays with us. We just have to call it back. So when I was living in the Caribbean, I would say middle of my career, when I had a boyfriend, we went to do some snorkeling, and it was this beautiful beach, and the area was amazing. It was pristine. So we were walking, and the way this area was, it was like small beaches that were surrounded by like cliffs. So once you pass from one beach, like coves, so if they were isolated coves. So we arrived to the last one, and there was no way to pass because it was very like rocky, and the rocks went into the water, a lot of current. So we just decided this is enough. Then we were going back, and the moment we were going back, we had to go a little bit in the water, pass to the next beach. 3 men, and it was 3 men, and it was that sense of like, oh, they don't have good intentions, and they pushed us to the beach. Yeah, they didn't, and they started to steal everything from us, and they pushed my boyfriend at the time and tied his hands, and I'm standing there looking at the scene, and they pulled this sharp piece of glass. They also had a knife, and they put this glass in his neck, and they were going to cut his neck. It was a broken glass. And then I'm looking at the horror of this scene, and at that moment, this is one important thing here. After my near-death experience, I lost the fear of death. But we might think that's a thing of the mind. It could be a belief. Yeah, I believe that I don't fear death. But this proved to me that I really didn't. Because what happened at the moment was like, when they are about to cut his neck, I turned my head around because I didn't want to see this horror. And at that moment, I see the ocean, and the sun is touching the water, and it produces the sparkles of light. And when I see this, I enter into that state of calmness. Imagine in a moment of horror like this, and all thought started to be gone. And then at that moment, the only thing that crossed my mind was the thought, today is a good day to die. And I entered in the state of surrender. When I did this, there was no more thinking. This could happen, I could be raped, I could be killed, nothing. I was just in peace, absolute peace. And then this guy, I probably was like 90 something, 94 pounds. And this other guy was like 200 pounds. And he pushed me, he lied on top of me, he was going to rape me. I could not even feel his weight. I was in my super state of Ingrid. And then, a girl is about to be raped, and she'll be screaming, crying, nothing. And then when the guy is about to do his thing, I grab his face, and I put his eyes in my eyes. And I said to him, dear, don't do this. And he's jumped like a coil. And he just moved and he told the others to, we're leaving now. And then at that moment, I stood up, they left. I untied my friend and I said, we have to climb. It was that wall, that cliff. We could not go that way because there was the cliff. The other way, the guys were there. So climb. And then he said, like, what happened? And said, they're going to come back. And we were young, strong. We climbed this cliff. And at the top of the cliff, there was the bushes. And I said, go down, go down. When we were hiding, the three guys came back. And he's like, how did you know that they were going to come back? What happened? Why did let us go? And he was an atheist. And I said, if you didn't believe in guardian angels, the time. I didn't give him more details because he didn't believe in anything, but he didn't have to. He witnessed this. From that day on, his heart changed. I mean, when you witness something like this, there's experience is there. So we went down, we were able to hide, and we had to walk all this mountain almost naked. And then some surfers pick us up, they help us, gave us clothing, everything. We went to the police, and we were the first people alive that was able to give description. And they said, we've been looking for some people that have committed, I don't know how many murders. We were the only survivors. But the most incredible thing about this experience, Michael, is almost none of that. But the moment that I saw this guy, the moment we connected eye to eye, there was oneness. All his layers of conditioning fell off. And there was no enemy. It was, this is just an illusion. I don't know what he saw, but it had to be something so big that he decided to leave. And then, but I knew because there was so much conditioning in him that he was going to come back. That's why I had that clarity. But experiences like this, in which meditating for so many years, practicing presence, being aligned with God, with consciousness, with the light, is what gives us this power. So at that moment, it was that possibility of being in complete full alignment, and just it turns into power.
Ooh, beautiful story. Beautiful. Okay. Can you take us to the next chapter of life? Did you go to graduate school straight away? Did you wait a little bit? Did you go for practical experience? And then how did intuition, how did being connected to the universe, how did it all play out?
Oh, I was always connected. I was always very sensitive. I was always been an empath. And so that made it hard too, because this world of emotions. And yeah, I really have to tell you, I never was like the regular person. I always had just a life that went deeper, and many more experiences happened, many more. Encounters with death were like there all the time. I had typhoid fever and almost died from that. I had a
How did you get typhoid fever? Where were you? On an island?
Yeah, I lived in a war zone for 3 years. So one of the things I did when I graduated, this is the whole story, but first let me rewind the whole thing. I went to live in Europe for a while. When I came back from Europe, I already had done my work with mangroves before I left. So I had my chapter where I work in San Andres Island in the Caribbean. I worked with the mangroves, and then that ended, and I ended up in Europe, living there for 2 years, coming back. And then I got a job with the Colombian Navy. And I was hoping to be sent to Cartagena, you know, the Caribbean, the place where everybody wants to be. And they sent me to the Pacific coast of Colombia. There had been an oil spill, and they needed somebody working with all the environmental impact that this oil spill caused. So they opened a research institute. Is when I went there as the head of the marine biology and ecology department. And then this was a war zone, and I was born in a country at war.
So was it FARC?
FARC, yeah. So
Okay.
Colombia was
FARC.
was always a country at war. But you know, once you're in the big cities, we experience all the bombings, everything growing up. There was always war, but the big cities were more protected. Once I moved to the jungles of the Pacific, oh wow, is when now I knew what a war was. And for 3 years of my life, every night I went to sleep not knowing if I was going to be alive next day. And like I said to you, I don't fear death. I mean, you're dead, you're gone. No, it was like what they would do to you, rape you. If they usually what they do is that if it's a girl, they would kidnap you, use you. You don't know. I mean, it's like it was all this fear. I don't know what is going to be of my life here. And for us, every time I went to collect samples, we have to go with 3 guys complete armed with M16s, M4s, just for us to collect our water samples. So it was like, wow, we were trying to do science in the middle of war. So it was a very, very hard time, very, very difficult time. People at the beginning told me, people that move there only able to stay there maximum 3 years. And I just thought, oh, come on. Oh, yeah. Because living at that level of stress kills anybody. 2 years, I was done. I could not be there. And the reason why I stayed that long is because in Colombia, imagine the majority of the budget was going to the war. So the money for science was about 4%. So you got a job as a scientist, oh my God, you keep your job. And I always had the expectation that I could be moved to the Caribbean, but that never happened. So it was 3 years living there. And it's when and where I met my husband, which I started to have visions of the future, like I mentioned at the beginning, since I was 4 years old. And when I was 9, I had a vision of meeting him. And when I met him, this place was called Tumaco. When I met him there, yes, he was the person of my vision. So imagine it was like seeing a ghost. Like, and then for him was like, he's like, this is the least place in the world where I thought I would meet my wife, because he was U.S. Special Forces. So who knew? So
was it visual, you knew, a touch of the hand, all the above, just a sixth sense? Was it multiple things that kept flashing in? Can you give us just this much flavor?
Yeah, then the very first time I saw him, I did not recognize him like that, but oh God, we fell for each other. It's like you see this person and you're like, whoa. But, you know, I was the head of the marine biology ecology department. I had to just keep my place, you know. And then I was at the beach. I saw the group of, we call gringos. They were coming down the beach, and then he sat right next to me, and I'm like, I'm not looking. But I was like, oh my gosh, like. And then he went to play volleyball, and I was friends with the doctor of the base, because you asked me about the typhoid fever. Everything happens for a reason. So if I didn't have this typhoid fever, I would not have met him, really, because thanks to the doctor that treated me for typhoid, is that I got to meet him, because he introduced us. So he's like, Ingrid, come and meet my friends. And I'm like, yeah, here is my friends, Michael. And he was there like, hey, my name is Miguel. Or he tried to speak Spanish. And I'm like, oh, don't worry, I just speak English. And he's like, oh, it's so good. So I did not recognize him there, but it was this attraction. Like it was right there. And the next day, I am in my base. We were in some different bases. I was in a Navy base and he was in an Army base. And then I am, oh, Marines. He was in the Marines base. So I was eating, and suddenly someone is standing at the end of the corridor in the cafeteria. And then I turn my head. Right when I turn my head, that's the exact same vision I had when I was 9 years old. Exact same thing, Michael. To the point that I dropped the spoon. I was like, and then I thought that I was like, no, I don't think so. I told the beans, even though I had attraction and everything, but I was like, what? I don't think, I'm not ready for this, blah, blah, all the blah, blah. And then, but he came and he said to me, because it was not easy to access our base or for them to leave their base. Imagine, this is a war zone. So he said, you don't imagine how hard it was to come today to visit you here. And I said, oh, I imagine, because I'm already thinking the universe is orchestrating this. So there we got to, he invited me out. And then
when did you tell him how much capacity, ability, connectedness you have? Did he figure it out? Was he already using it for his special forces, or it was decades later?
Later. So I'm so glad you asked me this. Not everybody asked this question, Michael.
Yeah.
But it was actually, wow, it was 10 years later that I told him, but he already realized that things happen, and he's like, why when I am around Ingrid, things happen? Because he started to say, when I'm with you, they will give us VIP tickets, they will give us things, they will give us stuff. It was like, he said, this has never happened in my life before. What is that you bring with you? Because he said, every time I'm with you, it's like, there's something of giving and something, there's an aura here. He didn't understand any of that, but he was witnessing things. So many years later, one day we are eating in a restaurant, and I already started to write my book. But of course, he's seen me meditating. He will always say that Ingrid does her things. Like, I don't know what she does, but so he grew as a Lutheran, and he's just very into his things. We have all the respect for each other. And then one day we're sitting in a restaurant, and I just knew I now have to start sharing these, because I'm writing this book. And then I said to him, what if I told you that I could see beings of light, and that I know that I was going to marry you since I was 9 years old?
I love this.
He opened his big blue eyes like, and then he paused for a minute, and he said, Ingrid, after knowing you, at that point with 11 years, because we met 1 year before getting married, he said, after knowing you for 11 years, knowing how grounded you are, knowing how loving you are, knowing how giving, knowing the way the mom you are, everything you are, if anybody here could be lying, that is me, he said. If you tell me today that you could move mountains, I believe you. And this was the beautiful thing, that he saw it from my actions, not from my words. So he's been knowing me for all this time, and then he's saying, if anybody, because I said, you think I'm lying, like you would think that I'm lying. He said, if anybody here could be lying, is me, he said, not you. And from that moment, and now the fluidity of the things I'm doing, my book. And then I asked him if he could write the foreword of my book. He did. He wrote a really beautiful foreword. And then he supports me with all the stuff I do. He doesn't maybe understand it, but he supports me. So this is just been amazing. Yeah. We even live experiences like one day, once we just, I think it was the first time or the second time I came to visit him to the US. We're driving in the highway, and then the beings of light told me, because at this point I have become disconnected, but I was starting to get my connection back, because it was that sense of like sensing that it was important to have, but my intuition was always present there. But there was a moment where we were driving, he's driving on the road, and I said, the wheel of the truck is going to fall, stop. Then we went to this little place. We were driving, it was a long trip, and then he went to a place, they checked the wheel, nothing is happening. They even checked it, everything. And then we went on the road again, and I said, stop, the wheel of the truck is going to fall. And then he stopped the truck, and the wheel fell.
Oh my God, that's good.
It broke. Yeah, so he's like, how did you know this? Because we couldn't hear anything. And he said, oh, I just hear a noise, I said. But I always had this big intuition. So many things like that happened when all the time we were together. So he already also had this sense of like, there's something special, there's something different about her. So yeah. And then after that, what I call my big awakening happened, Michael, because there was many mistakes we make in life. And I wrote an entire book with all these, but with all this stuff, that it was a point where I felt that I wasn't worth it of the angels, that I wasn't worth it, because I have made mistakes here and there. And then it's when they show you clearly there's only love for you. We are the ones that judge ourselves, but hey, that judgment sometimes also bring us to change our ways, huh? So there was a moment, I was still, I think at this point, I'm switching careers between NASA and the Navy, and then
and this is the US Navy now. So you're in America, you're in
I'm in America, I'm with my husband. I got to do my PhD. I was now with the University of Southern Mississippi doing my PhD as an oceanographer. And then I think at this point I already graduated from this. And and then I'm now with the US Navy just studying. And then I got to go to, I think at this point I went to Indonesia and Singapore. And then I went to visit this friend in Thailand, and she said to me, Ingrid, I'm going to go meet the Dalai Lama. You want to come? I'm like, yeah, of course. I've been wanting to meet the Dalai Lama since I was 5 years old. Then she's like, let's go in September. This was May. And I'm like, I don't know if I can go, because I had another trip program to go to the Middle East. But then everything happened for me to be able to go to this trip. And I ended up in Dharamsala, India, receiving the teachings of the Dalai Lama for like a week. And then I found myself sitting next to him, holding his hand. And in that moment, I was trying to access the library of my mind and thinking, what could I say? The 10,000 things I could say to the Dalai Lama in this moment. And then it was that, I guess, clarity, that consciousness that says, stop. I'm like, whoa, all I need to do is to stop. And then it was just an incredible moment. And after that, I traveled for a while. But then when I went back to home, I entered into very, very deep depression. Because I realized that my most important connection, that was that connection with the inner, with the beings of light, with God, I had fractured. I had become disconnected. And I was so depressed. And then in this deep depression, I already had my little baby. He was 3 years old. I was next to my boy. And then one night, Michael, I felt so depressed. My husband was traveling. I barely could even, I felt I cannot even get out of this bed. And I felt that I wanted to die, to commit suicide. And at that moment, I looked at my little boy and I thought, it's when this big compassion for people that are feeling like this. I know how it is, because I look at him and I just thought, I cannot leave him here. I am his mom. What if we live together? So imagine falling into the deep, that's like the darkest night of the soul.
It's so forgetting a lot.
Yes. And at that moment, I thought, how can I be thinking this way? Immediately, I was like, whoa, I just fallen deep. Then it was another thing happened. I just had few clarities. And of course, I know it was that consciousness, the beings of light right there, our guardian angel right there, just telling me, if you kill yourself, you don't gain anything. You don't do anything with that. Because guess what? Life continues and you have to have another rebirth and start from a child, and now you have to go. And like, I just had this sense of like, oh yeah, I don't want to do all these. This is kind of a lot. Then it was the other thing, like, what if I give myself one more day? One more day. And it came that sense of like prayer, deep prayer. And my prayer was not for things to be changed. My prayer was, God, help me to see, because I have become blinded. God, help me to see. And then when I woke up in the morning, the first thing that came to my mind was, you need to go to the psychologist. You need to go look for help. Because up to that point, I was the scientist. I was doing really good. I was very successful in my career. And then I felt I don't need help. And I would always put this face like I'm doing good, but inside I wasn't. So I went to the web. I looked for the name of a psychologist in my area, and then I found this guy, good reviews. I wrote the name on a piece of paper. That same day, I went to the cafeteria. I met this friend that worked for NASA. She's talking and she said, oh, we started to talk about something. She said, my daughter is going to this psychologist that is amazing. Same guy was in the paper. And then I met another person, completely separate person, that talked me about the same doctor. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I'm going to go meet this guy. And I went to meet the guy, and oh my God, that was amazing, because he was the person I needed. He was very spiritual. So it was the first psychologist I met that was spiritual. I mean, there's many, but I just didn't know any. And this guy had the whole package. So it was like, oh, this is so good. And then I started to talk to him, and I never felt judged. Never. Even when I mentioned, I see spirits, I was like, nothing. Oh, I could say more. And then there was the moment when the guy asked me to write a list of all my sufferings. And again, this is the arrogance, like, I don't write sufferings, I am a scientist. But I just thought, let's just go with the flow. Come on. That I did the list of sufferings. And incredibly, that's how my book started. When I felt the call of writing the book, and then I started to put all these sufferings. It was very cathartic, and I wrote this stuff. And then I just went to him and I said, this is my list, and we write it together. And he's like, oh, I have never met anyone in my life that has suffered this much and is mentally stable. He said, wow. And I just look at the guy that I didn't know I was the one that suffered the most. And I was like, oh my God. And this question I've been asking all my life came back again. And a lot of us ask this question all the time. Why me? Why me? And he came with the answer that you know, that room with the lights off, that turned the lights back on. And the moment I said, why me? He said, why not? And then I realized that he had been listening, because the power of healing when we are really listening, because he started to say, he wasn't looking at his notes. He's like, thanks to this, you have done this, thanks to this, that, thanks to this, thanks. I'm like, whoa, at that moment, all my neurons, all my connections started to happen. I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, I discovered purpose behind everything. And at that moment, I enter into the state of absolute gratitude. And it's when I had the realization that nothing ever, never, ever, never happened to me. It happened for me. And it was precious. And now I did not want to change anything. Thanks to that, I was where I was. Thanks to that, I became more empathic, more loving, more compassionate, more open, more unique, more everything that I was thanks to all this journey. The other miracle that happened that day, I said 3 miracles happened. The next one was that I had the clarity, the realization, I'm sitting in front of this person and nothing else is real. My only truth is this now moment. The rest is in my head, and I have the power to do with it whatever I want. Wow, that was powerful. And the last miracle at that moment was, forgiveness. It was the realization that, wow, there is nothing to forgive because nothing ever happened to me. How can you forgive if you're grateful for everything? So I could say 2 things. There was nothing to forgive, or everything was forgiven. And I left that office like, wow. And then when I'm in the car, Michael, I'm driving my car, I started to feel that God, what we call God, consciousness, source, I don't know, love, was absolutely everything. There was nothing that wasn't God. And I had to stop the car, and I'm like, God was the manifestation of everything that is. And then at that moment, you know, is when I knew. Remember when the Being So Light told me when I was 19, they say in 20 years you will understand. I was just 40, so it was like a little bit more, like 20 years had passed at that moment. And then is when I wasn't counting. I forgot about the 20 years, of course. I mean, all the challenges, all the difficulties, life. And then now I knew 20 years had passed, because the 2 questions I asked when I was 19 in the bus were answered. And the questions were, when did we stop being one with the whole? And how is it possible to forget who we truly are? And it's when the voice, the reconnection with the Being So Light happened completely again. And it's when they said, one never stopped being one. One never left the source. One just became distracted and seemingly forgot. And that connection came back. And from there, then I knew that that writing I've done at the office, so the doctor was going to be my book. And then I started to, that propelled me to write this book. And then, yeah, from now, although I resisted too, because I thought, I don't want to write about me. I mean, like, this is egotistic. And the Being So Light, until they said to me, okay, Ingrid, this is nothing to do with you and everything you can do for others. And that's when I just let it go, surrender. And yes, you're right. You're right.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't I blow some sage your way, and then in a bit, and maybe with Angel's prompting, we can cover more recent happenings and anything funny about your husband. Like, you know, you're deciding where to go to dinner, and he's the one that's tasting the air, connecting to the universe, and he's coming up with something popping into his mind. He must be at least sampling a little more often these days. I don't know. We'll get to that if you want to share anything about on that front. This is something of a, what do we call it? A staple on the show. Guess, catch, sage. If it's your first time watching the show, I light a little bit of sage. The sage is Juniper Ridge. It's on my website. I'm not sponsored or anything. I should be. But you can get it at Whole Foods. It's really, my microphone's right here. I keep looking at it. It's really conservative. It's consistent, I guess is the word. So it's fun sage from California. So I'm going to light it. Some people laying their eye on this start to taste it in their mouth. You can smell it wherever you are in the world. And this may be 2025. You're watching this. You'll still get the smell of sage. But Lorna Byrne, the Irish angel mystic in Ireland, caught the smell of daisies and roses. Jennifer McLean caught 3 flowers in Laguna Niguel in California. So allow for what you can allow for. I'm using a red-tailed hawk feather I found on a trail from a Native American chief. And I'm just wafting it towards Ingrid right now. We did this before the show too, so we're cheating because we know it works. But okay, Ingrid, what are you getting? Are you getting St. Andres Island Ocean in addition to sage? Are you getting flowers?
Oh, I just feel like if I'm in a meadow, it's like fresh, and it's like I can almost describe which flowers I'm smelling, but it's like popping everywhere. It's like different fragrances, perfumes. It's like even what I felt before is again this sense of freshness. Like,
and with your permission, I'm going to ask angels, and I'll put a couple photos up in a second. Maybe we get topical, broader topics or focus topics. I don't know what to call it. Topics from angels. But I'm going to blow into the microphone. Forgive me for this. With your permission, maybe I saw St. Andres, the island. My middle name's Andre, but I saw it today, and I've been fixated on this island for some reason. I know you spent time on there, so I keep blabbing about it. I think we did this before the show too, but I'm going to blow in this microphone, and if you'll allow for a little bit of ocean smell, whatever I'm trying to say, not sea spritz, but just ocean feeling and wind on your face. So let angels do all the work. It's not me, not you. I'll do it one more time. Are you getting that? Oh, can you hear me?
yes, it's
okay.
So good. Oh, I love it.
Did I do good? Did I do it?
It's amazing.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Because I never know. I just, I'm on a learning curve here like everyone else. So I'm going to put this away before I smoke my room out here. And then with your permission, I'll put Joy's photo up. I know it's been colorful. I know it's been hard. I know typhoid is not fun. But think about it, what you just said about when you walked out of that room and I'm getting whooshed. It's beautiful. And so have Joy remind us how there's beauty in all the little moments of life, even the ones that aren't so pleasant. And what does she have for us all? This is an angel named Joy, by the way. Don't worry about photos or structure. You can see her full on. You'll get it the way you need to get it for the audience.
Beautiful.
Anything to share out loud?
Yeah, I want to say to people that the reason why we can connect at this level of being able to, you being there, me being here, and smell and sense and taste, and is because we're more connected than we think we are. And because guess what? The angels are everywhere. And then they're sharing with me their gifts wherever we are. So it's pretty much like you put the joy there. It's a joyful play. It's just beautiful. Yeah. Oh gosh, thank you, Michael. This is incredible.
So I'll put Charlotte, Min, maybe Michael or Gabriel, and we'll do a couple Native American chiefs. Get something for yourself, hug, some humor, some compliments, whatever is good. They'll just know what to do. But then maybe something we can share out loud, you'll let us know. But here's Charlotte, everybody's favorite teacher from childhood, with words meant to help you expand, words of wisdom. And get a hug too. I should have said that all along. I forget everything. She's one of my business managers. You can find these photos on the website. Put your hand out, feel what you can feel. Don't judge. You may feel it on your back if you're trying too hard to feel with your palm or fingers. It's really letting go, like you would to watch TV, go for a walk, hug the dog, cook a meal, everything. You're letting go all the time, but you don't give yourself any credit for it. If you gave yourself credit, you'd be at the Dalai Lama's level. There's unconsciousness, consciousness, but just paying a little more attention transforms one into the other. Whatever the metaphor is, it'll make sense to you when you do it. Okay, Ingrid, what did you get from Charlotte on that one?
Just again, Michael, that beautiful sense of connection, the sense of like embrace. You know, I have had that experience of, and I'm here with you embedded in that, and just feeling like I am little, so little, because the hug is so big, it's so immense, and this hug is like a cotton candy, just being immersed in so much sweetness and joy and softness. And so I'm just here smiling as you're just sharing with us how incredible is to live life from the place of joy.
Okay, beautiful. And here's my guardian angel one way, just a silhouette, but she's a white ball of light. She's on the book cover of Listening to Angels. She's a white metallic ball of light with a blue metallic ball of light. You'll see that all over my social media on my book cover, duh. But so another way, there's no one way about the photos is what I'm trying to say. So we're going to judge everything. My only advice is give it a rest, give your heart a chance to jump in the driver's seat and to do some action, because it's already a pro. But here's that guardian angel. Min is fine for the name. But ask for your favorite ocean smell is what I say, because I know you're an ocean person.
Catch no, I already have it. This is good.
Yeah, and they have me, angels, going into a pool every day to see she's light waves of energy in water. So I'm always looking, it's so sunny in San Antonio, I'm always looking at the rippling and I'm connecting with her. It hasn't been that she's been in the background, but there's been so many other angels, so much learning to do. It's sort of my time to, I guess, invisibly connect. I couldn't tell you any more than I'm just showing up to the pool. I go now 3 times sometimes in a day to get in the water. Water is such a great way to get yourself flowing again.
Just purifying, holding it, like it holds you, and you just can let you just surrender in the hands of the divine. Did I tell you I used to swim with dolphins?
That's okay. I wrote this down and I was just going to say this because it's been driving me nuts, because here you are, a marine biologist and more, oceanographer, all the rest. But I wanted to see if there could be a memory of connecting with, I wrote animals, even though I know it says marine life and I know they're mammals and everything else. But when in the water did you connect? That was super special. If you could share. I've been dying to ask this.
And I'm just, let's see if I can show it to you through the screen here, but I don't know if that's a good. But here I'm swimming with these.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I mean, with the dolphins was incredible because they such a loving, amazing animals, but they are very intelligent. And then when they sense your vibration, they invite you to come in the water. If they don't like your vibration, you better watch out. They kick you out. So I used to get in the water and be so welcome, and they will bring me to swim with them, and they go in front of you, and with their fins, they hug you. Oh. So I would just get big hugs, like.
Could you hear them, even though it's more like a wave of consciousness and it turns into words for you? Could you hear them yet, or have you, or it depends?
I could hear them, because the other ability I have since I was a child I started to converse and had that connection with plants and animals since I was a child. The first thing I started to hear was first I wrote in my book. I had this incredible experience with what is this slimy animal?
Snails?
Snails. So they will come in my bed. There's a whole story about it, but I talked to them and they stop coming. So it's when the beings of light said, yeah, when you talk from the heart, you're connected with nature. So I started to have this communication with animals since I was a little child. And then by the age of 16, I think, or 15, I started to communicate with plants. And the first plants I was able to hear was the grass. The grass was making such a symphony, and I was going to touch it, and it was just, and it was alive like that, like talking. And I said, what is happening? The being so light said, is welcoming you. That's why people love to lie on the grass. They don't know, but it's talking to you. And then later I was able to listen the medicinal purposes of the plants. And then I started to have this deep communion with nature. So yeah, every time I was accepted by the dolphins, or I would always do it with respect. Even to cut a flower, Michael, I asked for permission.
I have a little tug of war going on with ants because I'm rescuing them out of the pool. Any insect in the pool, I take a flip-flop, get it to the dry land, try to put them in shade if I can, be polite. But once in a while, like an angel named Mac, I'll put up Chogyam Trungpa, Tibetan Buddhist monk, and I'll put up Mac, don't call her Mackenzie, everything plants, animals, nature. It's not, I mean, it's absolute. If you talk to Mary, all creatures, big and small, all living things, period. But Mac also has a sense of humor and is like, bye-bye spider, once in a blue moon, because you can't be perfect. And you know, humans, we want to seize on things and make it black and white or right or wrong. And Angels once said, it's not, there's no such thing as right or wrong. There's proper understanding. But I have carpenter ants eating my fence, and you know, there's insecticide, and I don't want to finish that. But meanwhile, I'm like an hour later rescuing ants out of a pool. I can't, you know, it's contradiction. And so it'll eat me up.
You do what you need to do, Michael.
Yeah.
Look, there was I stopped eating meat when I was 5 years old. Even before that, I never really wanted to eat anything. But when I learned that it came from animals, I was never eat food ever again. Never again. But I was vegetarian for like many years. But when I went to live in the war zone, guess what? There was no food to eat.
Yeah, you ate what you had.
You have to. So there was a moment where if I didn't eat the fish they offered me, all of the chicken soup they offered me, because in my book, funny part is that there's a part where I write I was 5 years old when I stopped eating chicken, eating food, and it was with a chicken soup. And incredibly, when I mentioned it later, we just had to cut the book because it was too long. And once you compress, there's pieces of the story that now are missing. But in this piece of the story, when I met my husband, I said I was eating some chicken soup, and then people like, "Can you say you didn't eat meat?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that little part of the whole thing that said I had to eat meat because I was living in a war zone and there was no food." Yeah. So at that moment is when that clarity came to me. Eat what is being offered to you and be grateful.
There's always a broader perspective. We up in the brain, we want to settle, fix, and say we have no more learning to do, and we want to judge and fix everything. And nothing needs to be fixed. Another angel said that. Okay, Mac, don't call her Mackenzie. Everything plants, animals, and nature. Think dolphins, think plants. Catch a gorgeous vibe of the jungle when it was calm. That western coast.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I love it. I love it because also mainly the way I see the beings of light are light. Only if they need to be transformed to just kind of prove a point or something, they do it. But other than that, it's not need have all these forms and stuff. And I have met beings of light in many different ways, as even as people, even as animals. Even as
And that's something where whatever you take out of today's conversation, you don't have to do the list. You don't have to pay attention. It's a good idea to give yourself a break and try a little, like a pool. Put your toe in, put your knee in an hour later, 2 days later, whatever. I don't like to get in a cold pool, but give yourself a break. You can at least put it out there and trust that you're heard. So go and ask one of your angels to show up in human form as you go out and about town, and at least allow for some kindness. If a stranger with sparkly eyes, man or woman, interacts with you somehow, maybe you're not meant to talk, let them do the work. Let them interact with you. Here's a Tibetan Buddhist monk, Chogyam Trungpa. Call him Gentle Frank if you want a young shot of him.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah.
And I'm going to do Archangel Michael and then 1 or 2 Native American chiefs, and we'll come back to talking. Here's Archangel Michael. One way. Take it with a grain of salt.
I have a beautiful teaching about this. There was a day I'm doing a talk, and somebody asked me how Archangel Michael or Jesus or whatever can be omnipresent. Explain that to me. How can he be everywhere all the time? That sounds like yes. That sounds like a lie. And I said, let me ask, because I had that clarity of omnipresence. I just didn't know how to explain it. And I asked the being, so like, give me something I can use. And then, yeah, that day I was sitting in a meeting surrounded by people from all over the world. And then they said to me, easy, Ingrid, easy. And they said, it's like the Zoom. You're there sitting in your desk and you're surrounded by people from all over the world. You never had to move from your desk.
Huh.
Exact same thing. But there's 2 things you have to do. One, ask for the link. If you don't ask for the link, how are you supposed to connect? And second, use the link.
You got to push the button. I took a photo once that had the same angel in 3 different spots, which answered, that was something I thought about. You know, you're going to think about every aspect of what you can think about, because it's just a way of stalling. It's a little unlove or unconsciousness that wants to block the love. And it's always love in whatever form. And if it ain't love, it's a waste of energy a little, but it's okay. You're going to waste tons of energy for the rest of your day. Not the trick. The opportunity is simply to learn a little more love. A little first here, kindness, gentleness, whatever you want to call it. Okay.
Yes.
Unconditional love, spirit guides, Native American chiefs. There's Dull Knife, whose wisdom with some humor. Catch any of 50 scents in the air, like a pine, sweetgrass, juniper, Douglas fir, sage, tobacco, anything sacred.
You know, I just feel the spirit of strength and courage and wisdom.
Ooh, and he always has something usually for us. What would you want to pass along that he wants to pass along, if anything?
Oh, just the connection, and I feel that strong sense of reminding us the connection we have with nature.
That was beautiful. Thank you for that. Red shirt, Lakota Sioux, gentlest mom in the world. He's compassion, compassion, compassion. Anyone going through difficulties, divorce, health crisis, job stuff, they always go to him. So red shirt, and he's wearing U.S. presidential medal. So the day after the photo was taken, he and Geronimo were on horseback, Pennsylvania Ave at the White House. I think Teddy Roosevelt, but red shirt.
I just really see him like an eagle, like when you're able to have vision, when you can see, you know, like eagles can really see the big picture. That's how I see him.
And last but not least, young Geronimo. We still might do Audrey Hepburn and an older Geronimo, but he's action, dry wit, humor. The first 2 were proper, formal, yes, no. He's like, yeah, nah, just do it. You already know the answer. Kick in the butt.
Oh, I love that. Love that. Wow, look at those eyes. Like, you know, you also see the eyes of resilience. I also see how strong we can be. Like, we can do it. We can do it.
Here's older Geronimo, and these eyes, everyone out there, if you can do an invisible seatbelt anything you need, put it before him. You don't have to transact at the word level, but it is an act of faith, non-religious, religious letting go. So just trust something the universe can do, handier than you can grasp. Put it before Geronimo and angels. Ask angels to be there too. Here's Geronimo. So feel what you can feel. Feel like you at least get energetic guidance, like your compass just pointed in a new direction.
Beautiful, like amazing. These are, yeah, those eyes of strength and compassion. Is so much compassion.
Can we throw you under the proverbial American bus? Can Geronimo give you a compliment that you have to share out loud? Get two more that you don't share out loud if there's anything private. So get one that you can share out loud. It's an act of love, so I put you on the spot. I apologize.
Oh gosh. It's just that sense of like, girl, you can do it. You can do it. You have, you're abundant and you can do it. There's nothing you cannot do.
Okay. Audrey Hepburn, we're almost done with this part. But Audrey Hepburn, people can let her wink, smile, shoulder waggle, the eyebrow goes up. Angel, unconditional love figure.
She's so beautiful, so beautiful. She reminds me of my mom. She looks a lot like my mom. Very pretty.
One more. With your permission, Isabel, an angel whose tranquility, calm, a pond that's glass, or the ocean with no wind. It's like a mirror at 5 a.m. But she also is the energetic flows. So if anyone needs like to just feel reoriented or refreshed, this is the one, but it's a historical photo. So let her move, wink, smile, let her smile more. The eyes come alive. It's Isabel, Isabel.
So beautiful. Yeah, I see her smile.
And maybe she can give us a hint on a topic that will round this out. It'll remind you of something to talk to the audience about to kind of cap everything.
Yeah, I already have a couple of things that I want to share, and one of the, I mean, there's so many different things, but one that is very powerful is, what was the purpose of my first near-death experience? And once I was older and I was able to ask the questions, because we don't ask. And the being so light said, ask and it will be given. And I said, I don't know what to ask. Then ask, what is the question? So, but the questions are simple. And when I started to ask, okay, why my near-death experience, the first one happened when I was so young. And they said to me, because you were old enough to remember, but young enough not to be conditioned yet. So, wow, from that very beginning, what was coming was very pure, very real, very fresh. Ooh. And I meant to remember since I was very young. That was my pre-plan. And the other, when I asked what is the purpose of that experience, they said to me, to bring the message of the power of connection. And I said, what do you mean with the power of connection? They said, remember when you saw your body and it was drowning and you left it behind? They said, that was a choice that was made from your ego. Because your plan, the big plan was that, of course, that you were going to come back. And how we know that plan was going to be put in action? Because you went to look for help. See, so in that point, the ego cannot win because there was a bigger plan. So if it was up to my ego, I would have died that day. But because the plan was that I was going to come back, I went to look for help to the maid and my mom. So I asked them, okay, so if I was going to look for help, why did I waste time in the maid's room? Look at this. And they said, that is what we want to show you, contrast. What happened when you went to the maid's room? There was no connection. He actually mistreated us.
Mm.
She didn't care what we did when my parents were not around. She beat us.
Mm.
So there was no connection. There was no love. She could not even remotely know or feel what was happening. What happened the moment you met your mom? You know, Michael, I am, how to describe this? I am an example, or I am the possibility to show you that this connection between the spirit realm and the physical realm is real. Because that unconditional love between my mom and I, is when you can really, really say love doesn't have barriers. There's not there's no here. Love is love. Then I came back here to tell this is real. This is truth. One, that the communication between the spiritual realm and the physical realm is real. And two, that love doesn't have any barriers. So imagine that connection. My mom, that was 10 minutes away from the house, was the one that knew where I was and rescued me out of the tank. The person that was few feet away, no clue. Then they said to me, when there is no connection, there's division. When there is no connection, they will let you drown. When there is no connection, there is war. So that was bring that teaching, bring what is needed to be connected. See, and that be that presence that shows the world that there's no here and there. And this I came to actually completely validate in the last near-death experience I had. That was just last year.
Yeah, could you first, I just wanted to mention love is the fabric of the universe, stillness, suchness, all the things you've been talking about the whole show. I love this. But I didn't know about this till we were talking before the show. So what happened?
So this was actually my third near-death experience. The second one was a motorcycle accident, and the third one happened last year during a surgery. And then what happened in these surgeries, I have been actually guided. The story is very long, so I don't think I should tell it all today.
Yeah. We'll have you come back next year and you'll tell it then.
Yeah, because it's a long story, but like to just get to the point of the moment of the experience is that I needed surgery. I had a car accident, blah, and now I needed this surgery. And then I was very guided to this doctor. I changed doctors and everything because this doctor was going to listen. At that moment, I didn't know that I just had the clarity later, but things that she and the anesthesiologist were able to listen is that I'm here because, and before the surgery, I already knew that there was going to be a problem with my blood pressure. And I told them, you have to monitor my blood pressure. If I would have been with the other doctors, they would have been like, whatever, like what she knows, or no, they were listening. And because of that, they were actually directly monitoring my blood pressure. And then it was it was like what would you call it? From all the surgeries, one that was not that difficult. And then I am having this surgery when through the surgery, my blood pressure dropped dramatically. And I went into the state of hypothermia. And then since they were monitoring this, then they knew what to do. But when my body is going through all this stuff, this is the first time from the 3 experiences that I was asked if I wanted to stay or I wanted to come back. And then you know how usually people are told, you have to go back, you have to go back. No, I was given the choice. And then when they said if I wanted to stay, it was that sense of like, oh, again, like, whoa, I am in a 10 diamond resort. Of course, I want to stay in heaven. He was like, this feels so incredibly good. And I was again completely detached from the human experience and from emotions and everything. And then it was when they said, or you want to go back. At that moment, since I've been practicing presence for so long, state of consciousness, awareness, all that you can call, at that moment I said, wait a minute, is this a test? So I felt I am testing myself here. I said, wow, wow, wow. I said, if God is everywhere, if God is the manifestation of everything, if God is all there is, so where is here and where is there? And at that moment I said, there is no here and there is not there. And up to this point, again, because I was in that such elevated state of being, there was no judgment, there was not attachment. So at any point I thought, oh, my son, my husband, my family, nothing. It was, I knew everything was okay. And then, but the moment that I said, the only thing I thought about saying after I had that clarity was, keep me where I can serve God the most. And the moment I said those words, Michael, is when I started to feel the attachment. So the anchor to bring me back. Then the memory of, or the feeling, the connection, the feeling with my son, with my husband, with my family, my friend, brought me back to earth. And then is when, again, that complete, clear realization of home is not a place, it's a state of being. Completely validated. And from this day on, I mean, even after I had the big awakening, all that, even all that, only until this point, I started to truly, truly live. Because it's when I'm like, wow, it's not about that, it's about life. Life. And then I said, what we have to call all these is not about near death, it's about near life experience.
I love that. NLE is, I think, a whole new term needs to be, because every, like the near-death experience crowd, scientific crowd, spiritual crowd, name a crowd, pick any crowd, Buddhist crowd. Do they really want to meet Buddha? Do they really want to be loved? Do they really want to actually let go and connect? We have a million ways to not connect, but we have a million ways into the heart. And it's the choice in each moment that all moments can be the same. And that's the true beauty opportunity for us. But, you know, we forget all the time. And even if you learned it for a week in Curacao, you would still be back at the drawing board no matter what, because that's the definition of humanity. We forget, but our opportunity is to remember what doesn't matter about the details, love. So there's my little 2 cents. I gotta mention a really dumb random thing here. I'm still, I am so relating to what you're saying, but I am still in a cocoon. I cannot explain how much I feel like I'm at kindergarten all the time. I need stuff explained to me 1,000 times. I'm out in the backyard. I have dogs barking now. It used to be dogs when I was popping 12 years ago, 11 years ago on my runs. Dogs would come up wagging their tail really far distance away in Austin, in these neighborhoods where you're running a really long 11+ mile run. Dogs come up quietly and wag their tails. It's the opposite now. I've got dogs barking nonstop. It's not just when I have my dogs. I thought it was my dogs. And then I got rid of the dogs, and the dogs are barking just as much now. And it's not a bad thing. I've checked a dozen different ways, but it's totally catching me off guard when dogs in houses 2 doors down. I go to like just water, or to do my hummingbird feeder, or to water some plants in the morning. I'm really focused on my lawn, running, dogs. I'm powered down big time. But it's a little unsettling when all the dogs start barking, and it's not because there's a fox out there or anything. So I'm taking your conversation today with us has been a vigorous shot in the arm in a good sense, a lot of stamina, a lot of confidence, a lot of reassurance follow your path, listen, pay attention at least 1% more. Don't worry about how well you're doing at it. And don't worry about this. That's thinking, resistance, judging, fear, worry, stress. Just and get to here.
Yes. Yes.
Backstroke, crawl, freestyle, whatever I'm trying to say. I think I just said the same stroke twice. I don't know my swimming lingo. Can I do one more thing that's back to auras? And this I've done on the show before. If people out there just want to name the normal color that they see, yellow, gold, what, orange. But now if you can ask for Joy, I don't know if I can find her photo. You remember Joy.
Yes.
Ask her to just do a little extra light for you. And I only have one rule for folks at home. Ask, what is my one rule? Ask angels to make it nice. Just feel like angels. Get me out of my head. Get me into my heart. Make this nice. Amen. Rock and roll. Thank you. Om Saram. Whatever is your way of making what she said during the show. Allow and receive. But ask for Joy to show up or a little extra light around the lighter. Ingrid, are you getting a little extra?
I get the pink.
Yes. Good. And then
Yes.
with your permission, one more thing. Only unconditional love. None of my thinking. None of my worried about dog stuff. Just my heart only. I'm going to put my hand up from San Antonio and just unconditional love. Think of it as more angels, less moi, unless it's my soul. But if you want to put your hand up and feel, or just feel with all of you. And I've been doing one more thing. I've been whooshing rainbow light. So only if you say, okay, I'll do it like twice or 3 times, just whoosh. But is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so rainbow light your way, but it's really a lot of angels and a lot of umph. And did you get a separate? Ooh.
Oh God, I feel the vibration. Oh God,
thank you. I've
Yeah.
still only done that less than 50 times, so I don't know the words to do it.
Yes,
But
yes, I
it's
feel it.
late. Okay, and I'm going to do it again. This time, for the people at home, put a topic out there as a fruit. Papaya, it's all about your cousin. A watermelon, it's all about the job, your stress. Have angels lifted off of you if you want to think of it that way. But if you want to feel something, use this as an excuse to feel. You don't need this. Just ask angels to make it nice. But here we go. Number 2.
Nice.
And third one, I'm going to go back to that island. I have never been there, but St. Andres. Whoa, that must be a special place. So here comes a whoosh of that love at that level.
I feel the vibration is very, very, oh gosh.
Oh, so thank you for doing that, because I don't know what I'm doing, except that I know I'm supposed to do it. And can you tell us about San Andres? Should we be visiting there? Is it just beautiful? It's the largest, isn't it part of a biosphere UNESCO heritage site? And it's 5%, 10% of the Caribbean. So one last nature speech about this place. It's special.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely beautiful. Yes. And there's another island close by called Old Providence. And it's one of the areas with the huge coral reef. The only thing, they have had a little bit of trouble in the past couple of years because of a big hurricane that hit the area. So they're recovering from that. So if anybody goes to visit, it will be better to see how's the state in that sense of the people and the hotels and everything. But the area is incredible. I lived there for 3 years.
Ooh.
And I think the only reason why I left, because I was a person of the world. I needed to go and see more. Like I said, I've been in 60 countries of the world. So I could not stay in one place. I had to just be out there in the world. But and I have been in so many incredibly beautiful places in the world, and that is one. So I have had that privilege of being able to live in amazing places, and at the end of the day is realize that I said God is playing hide and seek with us, and our work is to learn to find him.
And all you have to do is stop doing this anytime you want, anytime, anywhere. Doesn't matter what's going on, but that's the problem, and that's the opportunity.
Yeah,
my problem is, my situation is, you don't understand my situation.
You know, one of the teachings I received from the beings of light was do a practice of gratitude. They said to me, Ingrid, you don't imagine how grateful every human being will be if they realize that for you to exist, trillions and trillions and trillions of subatomic particles have to be in agreement. The trillions of subatomic particles are agreeing to be you. You are a divine intention. So imagine now for everything, imagine this glass of water, I drink it with gratitude because I say trillions and trillions of subatomic particles agree to be this water, that Coke, and that somebody with the creative mind, or I see this penance, somebody with a creative mind that was connected with the creative thinking of the universe.
It just needs an O at the beginning of it. Instead of pen, open.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
I made that up on the fly, so I'm turning red.
Because no, that's perfect. Because, imagine like one, your openness and your connectedness connected, and two, your gratitude. Say, wow, imagine you in a state, and you know what happened? Michael, gratitude is the highest vibrational frequency there is. Because you only can be grateful with the things that make you feel great. And the things that make you feel great are the things that you love. So love is a synonym of gratitude. You're in a state of gratitude, you're in a state of love. So I say people learn to appreciate, learn to live in that place of gratitude. And you're vibrating as your authentic self. You're being who you truly are, that love. Beautiful. You have taken us somewhere today. I love this. It's www.ingridhonkala, HONKALA.com. You can find our book on Amazon, A Brightly Guided Life, How a Scientist Learned to Hear Her Inner Wisdom, 2017. There's more offerings coming, and there's more offerings on our website, so you should check that out. That'll be in the fine print of the video. Ingrid, anything else? How about this? You're never alone. Trust that angels exist and more. You know, beings of light, light beings. There's fairies, other unconditional love figures, including your ancestors. But what last bit of advice, if you're going for a walk before bed at night, taking a shower, wherever a person's like, I can remember something right now. What was I supposed to remember? What can they ask for from the universe to get kickstarted, to start that other engine that we have down here? You know, people always ask me about purpose and mission. They always need to have a purpose. I said, or the angels say, the beings of light said, your purpose is to be the light, to remember that you are the light. And your mission is to shine it. That's all. Wherever you are, in whatever job you do, in whatever thing, how you teach love, by being love, by being that compassion, by being that light. So just remember, you are the light already. And that is your only true purpose, to remember you are the light, your mission, shine your light. Oh my gosh. Be the light, shine the light. Ingrid Honkala, thank you for being on Angels, Positivity, and Love. It has been a treat. Thank you so much. Oh gosh, thank you so much for having me here. It was joyful, fun, loving, incredible. You are amazing. So, oh, Michael, just keep going, sharing this light with the world. Ingrid, thank you.